With the commencement of construction on the 700-kilometer Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and the 1,068-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry Superhighway, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Bagudu, has declared that President Bola Tinubu is currently fulfilling his campaign promise on infrastructural development across the country. Minister of Works, Senator Dave Umahi, and Governor of Kebbi State, Dr. Nasir Idris, also commended Tinubu for prioritizing the two road projects, which they believe will usher in economic prosperity for citizens of affected states and the economy. And this is in general, particularly farmers and traders along the road corridors. The trio spoke separately at the weekend during the inauguration of the Kebbi State section of the Superhighway in Gulumbe. The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway runs from Victoria Island in Lagos State to Calabar in Cross River State. Similarly, the 1,068-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry Road begins from Ilela town in Ilela local government area of Sokoto State and is expected to traverse 7 states, including Sokoto, Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, Oyo, Ogun, and Lagos. Bagudu said the project was memorable because it fulfilled Tinubu's campaign promise to be president of all parts of Nigeria by spreading infrastructure to all the zones. The minister pointed out that the construction of the superhighway showed that the president was a visionary leader who decided to invest in the country's future despite the prevailing economic challenges. Visionary leader, that's what the president has been described as, especially with regards to infrastructural development in Nigeria. How well has he done, Dr. Batim?
Well, what do you expect Senator Bagudu, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, to say? What do you expect his Minister of Works, Senator Dave Umahi, to say? What do you expect the Kebbi State Governor, Governor Idris, what do you expect him to say? These are just basically, statements that fit into expectations. Minister Bagudu, as the man in charge of budget, would ordinarily, of course, say that these projects are important projects. 1,068 kilometers highway from Ilela in Sokoto State, traversing about 7 other states. Now, what happened during the weekend was the commissioning of the Kebbi end of it. So what did you expect the governor of Kebbi State to say? Of course, he will say it is a welcome development. And Senator Dave Umahi has been very active on the Lagos-Calabar Highway. That one is 700 kilometers, and it's going through states from Lagos to Delta to, all the way to Rivers, Bayelsa, Rivers, all these states will be covered. Now, these are legacy projects for the Tinubu administration. And what the Tinubu administration is telling us is that these highways, either northwards or southwards, will create opportunities along the lines, open up communities, provide opportunities for tourism, create jobs, enable economic growth, and all of that. And I think these are 2 projects that the Tinubu administration is very resolute about. Now, the taste of the pudding, they say, is in the eating. They have put a deadline to it by the time when they will move from one, they call it, is it change? They call it, whatever. But whatever it is, we will be here to assess. These are major projects that the Tinubu administration should deliver upon. And it's not beyond the capacity of the Nigerian government to do this. What we have experienced over the years is that each president comes, he says, oh, this is what I want to do, legacy project. Now, would they deliver it? Can they deliver it? And I assume that on these 2 issues of the 700 kilometers Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, Tinubu cannot afford to fail. On the Ilela-Sokoto State down the road highway, Sokoto Highway, as they otherwise call it, he also cannot afford to fail. So he must know that Nigerians are watching. So the ministers, you don't expect them to come and condemn a project that is being overseen by their principal. Their principal says this is important. If it is important, we will see in terms of delivery and we will assess accordingly.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations to the president and, of course, the ministers and the governors for whom these roads will impact directly, the people of the states as well, whom the projects will impact directly. And in terms of infrastructure development, I think that's a bit hyperbolic to say, because when it comes to infrastructure, it's beyond roads. And yes, roads is a starting point, and part of the Tinubu promises during his campaign was that he was going to develop infrastructure, especially in the way of roads. So in that way, pass mark, at least to a very large extent. And if you look at it across Nigeria, we have seen movement in that area. The Minister of Works has been very busy. Now the Minister of Budget and National Planning has also been saying that, oh, we're doing really great. But if we're talking about infrastructure, the World Bank had said that Nigeria has a $2.3 trillion infrastructure gap. In fact, it says that over the next 30 years, hundreds of billions of dollars must be spent annually to close this gap. Part of the infrastructure is not just roads. And so when we're talking about infrastructure, and that's why I said the term infrastructure development is a bit hyperbolic, is we must look at other infrastructure, aside from road, we must look at power. This is a big deal. So yes, connectivity is being addressed, but how about power? And these are some of the things that hamper business growth, GDP growth in the nation. And when we talk about infrastructure development, it's not just about roads. Roads is a big part of it, absolutely. But there are other infrastructural development that must happen in Nigeria for the government to begin to say that, oh, we have gains, we are winning in the area of infrastructural development. If it's road development, we can say, okay, fine, with the Calabar Coastal Highway, with this Ilela-Sokoto road, they are doing well, they are making inroads with regards to the number of roads that they're constructing. But let's look at power. Let's look at, we had the letter over the weekend, TCN having challenges, not available. Let's look at technology to support telecommunications, for instance. These are some of the infrastructural development that the country needs in the next few years to be able to bridge its infrastructural development. And so when we talk about infrastructure, I think it's important to not just focus on one area. That's just a part of it. But if we're going to have better services, better environment for businesses to thrive, we must deal with our power situation. Alongside our road situation, we must also deal with providing, infrastructure for telecommunications, connectivity, technology. The world has moved on. So these are some of the things that would be a challenge to this administration to ensure that in fulfilling its promises towards infrastructural development in its totality, we must look at. But in terms of road, absolutely, they are doing well, and I must also mention just how spread across the country the road infrastructural development has been. And I say this because in the report by the World Bank, we had to focus on the north, development in the north, because of the extreme poverty faced there and how that could potentially be a catalyst for more conflict, for an incentive to go into terrorism or to be recruited to be bandits or to be terrorists. It's important for us to focus on that. And we saw that during the last end bad governance protest, what happened there, and how we talked about how we must begin to look at the north and ensure that infrastructural development is also concentrated there, so that they are not, they are not left behind in the development as a whole of Nigeria. But again, congratulations, but again, a lot of more work to do when it comes to infrastructural development and financing of this development. We'll move on to our next story. Dangote Cement PLC has made investments of over $280 million in compressed natural gas, CNG technology and infrastructure in what the firm said is a demonstration of its support for President Bola Tinubu's CNG initiative aimed at providing cheaper, cleaner fueling alternatives for Nigerians. Group Managing Director of Dangote Cement PLC, Arvind Pasak, said the investment was aimed at acquiring 100% CNG trucks as part of a long-term plan to transition the company's entire fleet to CNG. Pasak said the move marked a significant milestone in Dangote's clean energy transition, with the objective of operating most of its fleet on CNG by mid-2026. As of this October, the company said it had received its first batch of 1,500 monofuel CNG trucks, while expecting additional 1,600 CNG trucks, totaling 3,100 before the end of the year. President, Chief Executive Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, said the company's investments in CNG was also in line with Nigeria's nationally determined contribution NDC under the Paris Agreement, which aimed at net zero emissions by 2060. All right, Dr. Abati, clean energy, the way forward, CNG buses, Dangote investing heavily in this.
Okay, Nigeria is a signatory to the Paris Agreement. Under the Paris Agreement, which is basically about climate change, clean energy transition is one of the major issues. And what is obvious is that, look, the Nigerian government or governments cannot do it alone. They need also the collaboration of, the private sector in their countries and also other stakeholders buying into that clean energy transition. Now, this energy transition that we talk about, let nobody deceive themselves. It's going to take about 50 years. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. However, the Tinubu administration has expressed commitment to energy transition, and that's a big issue about CNG. Now, add to that the fact that President Tinubu has said, it's cheaper. Clean energy CNG project by the Tinubu administration will give you 200 naira, per liter. If you buy fuel, you buy it for about 1,000 naira per liter. President Tinubu does not know, which is a major omission and an embarrassing thing, that he doesn't know that, in fact, we buy fuel for more than 1,000 naira. Nobody buys fuel any longer anywhere in any part of Nigeria for 1,000 naira. But he says, well, you have the choice of CNG, which is cheaper, which is more environmentally friendly. So as part of his administration's attempt to support, the clean energy regime. However, what the Dangote company has done is to say, well, we are supporting government. They say by 2005, going forward, they will have up to about 1,500 of their trucks that are CNG enabled. By 2006, they will have an additional 1,600, bringing to a total of about 3,100. Already, I think that the Dangote cement chief in Obajana cement plant says, okay, they already have 1,500. They are also going to provide more at the Ibeshe plant. These are the two cement factories that the Dangote company is operating. So you are likely to have, Dangote trucks on the road operating on CNG. So it's a good example, a positive, welcome, development that needs to be supported, that needs to be praised, that you at least have a private sector company that is supporting the government. The thing to add is that we hope that other private sector companies that are in that space of service delivery, of operating, will encourage the administration by following the example of, Dangote refinery, Dangote cement, or if you like, the Dangote industry. So that's what that example signposts at the second level of analysis. The third level of the analysis, however, is that for the Tinubu administration to succeed, that same CNG has to be made available to ordinary people. The people who either use hybrid cars or who use CNG-powered vehicles are saying that we do not have enough stations where they can fill the gas. So even if the ordinary man, 240, 50 million of us, even if that ordinary man is interested, a significant percentage of that population owns vehicles, would like something that is environmentally friendly, but is it available? So making it available, empowering the ordinary man to be able to have access to these CNG vehicles, which are not even made in Nigeria, but they can be converted. The government has talked about conversion kits. That's what government should worry about. One company is supporting, yes, that's patriotic. It is welcome. It is encouraging. But it's not just Dangote refinery, Dangote cement, encouraging the Tinubu administration. It must be an energy transition, that all of us can benefit from. Beyond the newspaper headlines that the administration hogs. But in any case, I insist that this energy transition is not going to happen overnight. It will take at least 50 years. But then we can diversify our energy sources, make things easier for industry and for the average citizen. So the ball is right in the court of the Tinubu administration. But what the Dangote industry has done is welcome and is to be encouraged and is commendable, in my view.
Yes, well, this move is said to be by Dangote Cement PLC as supporting the president's CNG initiative. And this was in the news last week when we were talking about the president's speech around it being cheaper to buy a cubic meter of gas than it is to buy a liter or the equivalent of petrol. And this is in light of the no subsidy policy and the attendant increase in fuel prices. The president had also said that he had welcomed private investment or private partnership, private intervention as well, so that we're able to make the CNG initiative a reality. Dangote as a private entity has come in, and this is a big deal. It's a big signal. I say this because when an organization like Dangote is saying that all its trucks will in the very near future be CNG powered, that's a powerful message. It would then also address, as they've stated, the issue around centers where you can refuel for your CNG vehicles. When more private organizations, bigger organizations like Dangote PLC, latch on or buy into the CNG initiative, it then makes it easier for that conversion or the CNG initiative by the president to come to life. Because number one, there'll be investment in that sector, which the Dangote PLC have said over the years they're going to invest in. Number two, the infrastructure needed to support the actualization of the CNG initiative and the conversion to CNG will be realized, because we've talked about how we haven't had enough finance in that area, and so people are finding it difficult, even for those who want to convert, at the point of where you get stations to fill up, it's not yet readily available. But when you have organizations like Dangote with a fleet of vehicles willing to invest in this area, then it means that there is potential success. Then investors can also, it sends the right signal to investors who might be looking to, to this area to invest their money in and to ensure that we're able to have that. Beyond it being cheaper, one of the big arguments for CNG is that it's cleaner alternative. Dangote PLC has also said that in line with not just the President Tinubu initiative, but a wider global climate change initiative where we're looking to achieve net zero by 2016. This is in about 30-something years, about 34, 36 years. And so part of that initiative, part of this drive is also a global consciousness that the world is moving away from fossil fuel to more cleaner energy. And it's a bit ironic because Dangote PLC in itself plays in that space. So to see that they are willing to put national interest, climate change above personal gains is quite, that's quite a good signal. And so I'm hoping that this would be, as they've taking the bold move and the bold step to venture into the CNG industry, that other private organizations, other private sectors, other organizations who work with big fleets would also sign on, buy into this, and in support of the presidential initiative, CNG initiative, can then make it a reality. And so this is definitely good news. And hopefully, with them coming on board, with them coming on stream, we would then begin to see more finance towards infrastructure to support the realization of the presidential CNG initiative. And again, just to mention that beyond CNG, we've talked about it here, we must not lag behind with where the world is moving to. Electric vehicle is also very big in terms of conversations. And with the price wars going on between China and America, we're going to see more electric vehicles becoming more affordable for people. And it's cleaner energy as well. So when we're looking at diversifying energy mix, we must talk about CNG, but we must also talk about electric vehicles as well. Two of them can work side by side without hampering the other. But, really great move there by Dangote PLC in terms of being able to support this initiative and the signal to other investors to come on board as well as partners for the realization of this initiative. Well, let's move on to some business news at this time. Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 and its topics index climbed on Monday after the country's Liberal Democratic Party lost its majority in Japan's lower house following elections yesterday. In China, the Shanghai Stock Exchange is currently at 3,305.30, having increased by 0.17% from the last closing value. The Nikkei in Japan rose 1.5%, leading gains in Asia, while the Topix was up 1.18%. Meanwhile, over in South Korea, the Kospi gained 0.61%, while the small-cap Kosdaq was 1.02% higher. Turning to Hong Kong now, and the Hang Seng fell 0.24%, while mainland China's CSI 300 saw a larger loss of 0.73% after China reported its worst industrial profit numbers since the pandemic. Coming home to Nigeria, the IMF says Nigeria has not approached it for funding assistance despite reforms that have affected the population. Arise business correspondent Rotu Sodiri asked if an approach had been made amidst the ongoing reforms in Nigeria. IMF African Department Director Abebe Imrose said the institution stands ready to assist if Nigeria steps forward with a request.
Any other questions on Nigeria? Okay, gentleman in the middle, purple tie.
Thank you. Rotu Sodiri with Arise News. Nigeria, of course, has been mentioned, gone through two really pertinent reforms in terms of liberalization of foreign exchange market and also the removal of fuel subsidies. Considering that when the IMF does extend facilities to countries, it does request that certain reforms have to take place in terms of reducing subsidies. So since Nigeria has already done that, there has been some talk around Nigeria approaching the IMF for funding. Again, this is within business circles, not at the government level. I just wanted to get some kind of statement from the IMF in terms of whether or not Nigeria has approached you and you know, what that would entail. Thanks.
There was a question about whether there's been a request for funding from the IMF. No, there has not been a request for funding from the IMF from Nigeria. But to just be very clear, this is also a question that has come up in the context of some other countries. If and when countries turn to us, we hope that they do so having a very clear plan of how they want, what kind of economic reforms they want to pursue. And turning to us would be a way to help reduce the funding costs that they face, as I said earlier. It's the right of every country that's in good standing with the IMF to borrow and have access to the concessional financing that we provide. But there is no request for funding from Nigeria at the moment.
All right, Rotus working really hard. He's not in studio, but he's has attended the IMF annual meetings and had the opportunity to pose that question. Dr. Bat, are you surprised at that response from the IMF?
No, the subject I want to comment on is Japan.
Okay.
Now, Japan held elections yesterday, and the election was supposed to be a snap election, a snap parliamentary election after weeks of scandal. And Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba thought that that election should be called. But what happened was that the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan lost woefully in that election. A major shock, a major defeat since 2009. In other words, in about, close to 18 years, you have the party, suffering a major defeat, along with its junior coalition partner, Komeito, that's the name of that other party. What is the reality now? The ruling party and its partner, Komeito, could not get a majority of 233 seats required in the lower parliament. And now, the anointed prime minister, he hasn't spent a long time there, faces, calls for his resignation, as if the party has not been able to deliver. And then, there's also the possibility of forming a minority government. This is the reality today in Japan. But you have to place that against the economic reality in Japan, which is, rates hike. Now, the Bank of Japan Monetary Policy Committee is going to meet on Thursday. Now, that Thursday, we had been expecting that the governor of the central bank and his team, his name is Ueda, Professor Ueda, that they will, increase rates. But what the governor of the central bank of Japan, the BOJ, has said is that, look, whatever is happening in the political scene has no effect on monetary policy decision. And we hear that again and again, either from the United States or elsewhere, that politics is separate from monetary policy decision. So the other major issue that will be coming out of Japan this week will be the benchmark rate decision that will be taken by the Bank of Japan. But economic analysts say that the expectation is that the Bank of Japan will remain consistent in hiking rates in order to, address issues in terms of disinflation and, treasury yields and all of that within that economy. So that's why I think Japan will seem to me to be the more important story in the outline provided.